next, what to do next, probably involves this. It's a radiator. Never mind that. And this radiator is designed for a Land Rover. I forget which model it was now. And the reason I selected that compared to any other radiator that I could get is because it's relatively narrow. Narrow being the kind of oval shape of Land Rover original Defender models. It's quite fit, this bag. Oh! And the reason it has to be relatively narrow is so that it can fit in between the frame there. Now, possibly I could have had it overhanging the sides, but I went for one that would basically fit in the hole. So only time will tell if that was a good decision. One of the things that's interesting about this is that both the outlets are on the same side, and rather than being one there or one up there, what have you. These ones here I think are probably for heaters and so on. I've just noticed this little spout here. Presumably that's a bleed off or something or other. Yeah, not sure about that. But anyway, look. So presumably the water goes in one end, turns around, and comes back and goes the other end. And this kind of seam inside there, I suspect, seals this half off from this half. So it becomes like a long, like a radiator with a wraparound in it. So it's a starting point, as with all these things. But it's nice and shiny, look at it. So, what I need to do is to come up with some mountings. Well, here's these little these are mounting spigots. There's two at the top, two at the bottom. Re-recording some of that because the framing wasn't very good. So this down here is there's enough space for an oil cooler and an air conditioning radiator. There's even room, you might even imagine, there for being a spare wheel down there. Except I've already got a spare wheel. Atla Reliant Scimitar, that's what they used to do. But anyway, whatever. There's certainly a big space down there, which could be useful. So we have this tube. We have the mounting plates that share the bolts with the anti-roll bar, and I'm just going to tack weld that tube on there, and that will be the first stage of the radiator lower mount. So I'm just going to tack weld the main tube to these side brackets. Okay, knock these off. So this is my kind of finished radiator mounting bracket, which will mount onto the same mounting points as the front anti-roll bar, and these big brackets sticking out as they do because of the thickness of the radiator core. So I'm just going to put these in place and we can fit the radiator, at least at the bottom end anyway. Right, so the bolts fit on right through. Okay, there are those. So let's put the radiator in place then. What am I doing wrong? I'm doing something wrong. It's upside down, that's what the matter with it is. And there we go. So, one fitted Land Rover radiator, and obviously it needs something to stop it from falling over, but I shall just rig something up from the radiator frame over there. And I suppose I could just check that the bonnet goes down. Yes it does, and I'm reaching under to see how much clearance, and yeah, 1.5 inch clearance, so loads of clearance. As part of my machinations regarding the radiator, I've got to consider this thing, which is my electric water pump, replacing the original belt powered one from the engine because the alternator is now there. So this is the BMW one, and after a lot of thinking, looking where pipe runs are and so on, I'm thinking that a good place for it could be down here. Now it does mean that it will have to come out if the engine comes out, but that's fine. Yeah, some bracketry is needed to do that. So I've got to make a bracket that takes up the 3 mounting points on the BMW water pump. 1, 2, 3, and it's particularly this one. This is the one that's going to be removable, in fact. So all of these are kind of rubber bushed with a central metal sleeve, and because it's going to be kind of hanging, it means that this one is basically going to be supported at the top, so it's going to go up and over, and that's it. And the prevention of waggling and snapping off, actually it's the other way up, sorry, the prevention of waggling and snapping off will be from this one, which is mounted onto the front part of the chassis. Now, how heavy should this bracket be made? That's one of the questions, and what stuff have I actually got is another part of that same question. And what I have here is some, what is that, 5mm plate, and it's a bit heavy, you might say. Maybe it is, although I'm not sure, because of the vibrations and so on you get. I don't want fatigue to break this thing off. Anyway, I sort of compromised in my mind by deciding to have threaded holes. So this will bolt onto here, but there won't be a nut, it will just be threaded. So I've already started the process by putting these pilot holes, and I located the location of this by putting a full-size 8mm bit on through the metal bush onto the plate to make a mark, and then I've done the pilot holes. So this will probably get slimmed down later, but at least at the moment I've got a beginning of what I need. Okay, I'm going to use standard grease to help the cutting of the thread, because I haven't got anything more specific for cutting. But yeah, so the tapered end of the tap goes in the 7mm hole quite well, and of course you need to make sure that it's vertical. Now you could do this very, very accurately, but I tend to find, especially with bracket things that don't even require a huge amount of accuracy, that it's not really necessary. You can do it by eye. So I'm winding it round, backing it off to release the swarf, turning it round, turning it round, turning it round, and that is now threaded. And that's a 5mm piece of plate with a M8 hole in it now, and now the other one. And there we have it. Some big flat washers. The rubber bushes are inside there, and the bolts are threaded into the plate. And this can get slimmed off later on if I want to do that. And for the moment there will be a right angle welded onto it, and as I mentioned, triangulation will happen with this bolt here, this mounting pad here, but that will go to a different bracket which is actually on the chassis, so it will have to be done a bit later. Because I'm using materials that I've already got, I've got this strange curved piece to flat bar, and I just need that to go suitably onto the chassis. I'm just going to cut a piece off and we'll sort out exactly how long it needs to be later on. So let me right, I'll just tack that on because of the rubber, actually. Okay, that should do that. I should now be able to take my magnet away, offer it into position, and it will finish up being something like this. And so with a bit of neatening up, we have this thing like that. So making use, more use I should say, of the threaded mounting plate rather than captive or even loose nuts, I've come up with this. So this is the same bracket I had before, but this one will be welded. The reason it's welded is so that the bracket can be removable, and that is so you can get the engine out and in easily. So that will go in there. And these two get bolted on to it. What I've come up with for the third bracket is something the shape of this, using the traditional cardboard aided design method, to be welded on the front of the chassis with a bent tab that sort of kind of leans in between the elements, and that means that the water pump will go on like this. So here's my metal copy, which I'll just put a quick bend in. So here we kind of have it. All that's required now is welding the brackets into position. So we have weld through primer, we have everything clamped in position, so now for tacking. And here's some hoses, connecting everything up. Now I'm short of a couple of hose clips, but I think you get the point. So both the in and the out, if you like, the in and the out for the engine are both up here. So I'm not sure which one's which, to be honest. Yes, I do, because that's an out from the water pump, isn't it? So it comes out of the water pump, into the engine, out to the engine, down into the bottom hose, and then back into the water pump again. So bit of a fiddle to come up with, that combination of hoses, but I think I've got there in the end. So yeah, the Radiator sub-project. with the exception of getting the water pump actually working, it needs electronic control. So the plumbing aspect of the radiator project is completed, although I will have to come back and revisit the heater connections at some point. Ah well.